get some coffee before I yell out into the camera. My teeth gonna be brown? Probably. Okay, where do I start? Hi! Do you guys like my kimono? It's to hide the fact that I haven't showered yet and I'm still in my night clothes. Wait, are kimonos not culturally insensitive? It's not cultural appropriation because, well, we were colonized. And if anything, Japanese did do some of the colonization of Korea and China, so I don't think it's culturally inappropriate, but I'm not sure. If it is, I am sorry. But this is made from Indian cloth, and oh, it is from elitist brand though. I don't know. I'm just gonna say no, so I don't feel guilty, and I love this one, so I'm not throwing it away. Let's talk about books. So this video is my 4th October reading log and final reading log for this month. I'm going to try a different format next month. Well, while this has been fun, and by the end of this month, I should have read about 17 books, and it didn't even feel that strenuous. So it was actually nice. I enjoyed this format, but I'm going to try something else next month because let's see what works for me. I have 3 things I wanted to talk about. First, the 4 books I'm going to be reading. 5th book is the one I'm finishing from earlier. And then I want to catch you guys up on the books I've already read in the last week. And the last thing I wanted to do was do a brief, informal review for the book and the movie Rebecca. I could make a separate video about it, but the person who's too lazy to shower for her YouTube videos is definitely too lazy to make another video. So yay, let's get right into it. Okay, the first book, I'm already reading this book, so I'm like 1/3 of the way in. So this is Death on the Nile by Agatha Christie. This is a murder mystery like most of Agatha Christie books. I'm going into this partly because the movie's coming out in December, and also partly because it matches the reading. I don't know if you guys noticed, but I had like color schemes every week, and it goes with my black and red color theme this week. So I'm 1/3 of the way in. I've already sort of figured out who the killer is. It's something I like to brag about, that I usually figure out what's going to happen next, because most movies and books have to follow certain laws. They can't just randomly throw a twist at you. They have to set it up at some point. And books, more than movies, because it's words, they have to literally write it down. So it's easier to figure out in books what's going to come up. I suspected 2 people. I was looking at the cast for the movie, and the character I suspected initially was not even cast in the movie as a character. Either that means they changed the name of the character to throw you off, or more likely they're irrelevant enough that they didn't matter to the plot of the movie. And my dog is just Elio. Never get anything done with this guy. Where was I? I've lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, so the second person I suspected, I think might have done it. I actually suspect 2 people. I think it's a coordinated effort. Should I tell you guys who I suspect it is? I don't want to, partly because I just bragged about how good I am at this, and if I'm wrong, I don't want to be caught on camera. It is embarrassing. Okay, all I'll say is there's a sun and a moon reference that 2 characters make. 2 characters that are not supposed to be having a conversation, and that really threw me off because it's like they coordinated their stories, and usually when that happens, if there is something foul afoot. Oh, that's a Sherlock reference, right? The game's afoot. Anyways, so that's who I suspect if you've read the book. But I don't know, the murder hasn't happened yet, so that could completely change. There's my out, so don't judge me yet. Next book I have is Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. This is the second book I'm reading by Celeste Ng this year. I liked her first book, so that's the only reason I'm reading this book. I'm not sure if it's a thriller. Her first book was, but this is a TV show and it seems slightly dark, so let's just go with that. I know nothing about the book. And I have a classic. I've done a couple classics this month. Everyone knows The Shining by Stephen King. I haven't watched the movie Shining yet. I usually don't like old horror movies because the effects are pretty shitty, so that's why I tend not to watch them. But everyone swears by Shining, so I will watch it and I will read this book first. And also, this is my first Stephen King book, so that should be fun. Horror classic, yay. I'm probably going to read this one last, so it's closer to Halloween. Is it spooky? I hope it's spooky. I mean, I know the pop culture references from it, of like the twins walking down the corridor and the guy screaming through the door. The last book I have is the one I've been really excited about, is Bad Blood by, I cannot say his last name, John Carreyrou. This is nonfiction, and I actually kept up with the story surrounding this book in the news when it was happening. So this is about Elizabeth Holmes, who had a company, Theranos, in Silicon Valley. The story around the company was that Elizabeth Holmes, who's the CEO of Theranos, claimed that she had the technology to conduct blood tests significantly faster and with less blood than any solution in the industry. And she came from wealth, and she's also very pretty. And you know how far a pretty face can get in this world. And she claimed her company was worth about $4.5 billion, and they managed to raise funding for the startups. And then people figured out that the technology A doesn't work and B doesn't exist, and the company crashed and a lot of people lost a lot of money. Then there was a lot of questions raised about, like, how did we let this happen? No one wanted to test the technology, or how do you blindly trust a person's word and just give them the money? So this is that story. This was a huge fraud that happened, 2015, 2016? I mean, a lot of people took inspiration from this story also. They're like, oh, look how much of a badass she is, because it didn't really affect her life that much. So now it's like, because of like Trump, and there's this whole brazen attitude that if you can cheat someone and make a buck for yourself and get away with it, then you are brilliant and have to be looked up to and not really an asshole. I don't know how that works. Like, how have we come to this point in society where we think it's good? Actually, we've always been this way. I don't know why I'm surprised by it. All of human history has been one group oppressing another and then writing the story the way they want it. So there's that. Good for her. I think she broke the glass ceiling when it comes to women committing fraud in the tech industry. So yay, go sister. Who says women can't commit crime or fraud you out of billions of dollars? Those are my 4 books that I have to finish this week, and I also have to finish Art of Seduction. The reason I'm putting that off, it's the book is making me angry in so many ways. It's a guide on how to get depressed as quickly as possible, I think. This is my book. This is the Vikram Seth, A Suitable Boy book that I said hasn't arrived yet in my last video. So it has arrived, and it actually turns out to be around 1,535 pages, and I've decided not to read it this month because it's small print and long. I'm just gonna watch the TV show and read the book at my own pace when I feel up to it. I will get to it eventually, it's just not now. Probably next month, probably later, who knows. I'm not committing to it, but now we have an inside joke in this household that if any of us ever turns up murdered, then the murder weapon is probably going to be this book, because it's fat. You could kill someone with this, like brain damage. Why am I trying to kill myself? I don't know. What books did I read last week that I wanted to discuss? I've read Gujarat Files. The writing was bad, but the journalistic effort was good in that book, so I enjoyed it for the most part. I've read One of Us is Lying, which was surprisingly good. I literally did not expect anything out of that book, and it was actually fun read. And then I read Chetan Bhagat's An Arranged Murder. I had the least expectations going into that book, and it still managed to disappoint me. It might be the worst book I've read this year. It is the worst book I've read this year, and oh my god, how is he still getting published? I'm not going to talk about it more because I'm going to do an entire rant video. So I actually wanted to film that video like 5 days ago when I read the book, but I was calming myself down because I was so angry, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to say a lot of things that I will regret later and people might get mad, so I'm going to calm down, and I'm clearly not calm yet, so I'm going to breathe and then try to get into a more stable place before I talk about that book. Breathe. Last book I read was The Devotion of Suspect X, which was pretty good. There were some big plot holes that I saw, which kind of bothered me, but it was still a really enjoyable read. And yeah, the author is good. It's a good detective fiction. There's a lot of moving plot points and this huge twist that comes up, even though you believe from the very beginning you have all the information, you really don't. So it's a good book. Yay. The last thing I want to talk about was Rebecca, right? So Rebecca book, Rebecca movie. Rebecca book, good. Rebecca movie, shit show. The book is worth a read as long as you're aware that it was written at the turn of the 20th century. There are some dated terms in there and the dated views about gender roles and all of that. It's not like blatant sexism or racism. It's there, but I think you can get past it if you take into account the time period. The protagonist and the narrator are the same people but at different time points. So the narrator is much older and wiser, and I can get behind, but the protagonist is just super obsessed with her husband and pleasing him and cannot see a world beyond that. I tend to not be satisfied by weak female characters. I know that that's not fair. I understand that. It's just a pet peeve of mine. But the book's good. I like the book. The Rebecca character, who is dead by the time this book starts, the character is never shown in the movie or the book. Even in the book, the main character never sees a picture of her or anything. It's just she's described constantly throughout the book by all the characters, and it creates this very eerie, suffocating atmosphere, which was thoroughly enjoyable. Like, I could feel the protagonist's suffocation, and I could feel how stifling that can be. So the book was good. The movie made a lot of creative choices which really didn't make sense to me at all. Okay, so this is my spoiler territory. I actually thought either they could have done a straight up adaptation of the book as is, or like take a really cool creative approach. Because Mrs. Danvers is so thoroughly obsessed with Rebecca, it would have made more sense to me if Mrs. Danvers was actually in fact in love with Rebecca, and that was part of her obsession, because she's always talking about how men are not worthy of her and they're just like playthings to her and they could never probably satisfy her. Rebecca seems like a psychopath. Everything is just like pawns in her game. So I either wanted that arc where there's a reason for this almost pedophilic obsession that Mrs. Danvers has for Rebecca, or twist it and like really make it Rebecca's perspective. Powerful men do this all the time where they manipulate people to get what they want, and it's considered really clever and they're good leaders for it. But like, that's what Rebecca did, and she was adored, and her husband didn't like her, but she's like, you do what you want, I'll do what I want, I'm not going to interfere with your work. So yeah, I don't think she deserved to die over it, and they could have really explored that. Or not make any changes to the book at all, just give it to us as is. But the choices the movie makes just pissed me off, because it tries to make Maxim de Winter more like strapping and likable. So in the book, he is very like rigid and strict and like, this is how things are done, and kind of boring. And they try to make him more charming in the movie, which I didn't particularly like, because there's not one way to tell a story. There's not one kind of character that's appealing. The heroine is very bland. So these two characters work well for each other, because even though they're very boring, their boring works for each other. Yeah, they didn't have to be this cool couple that we get behind, which is what the movie tries to do by the end of it, where they seem like kind of uninhabited by Manderley and are just living their carefree life in Cairo or something, which is not what happens in the book. In the book, they're very English about it. Like, 4 o'clock is tea time. They read to each other. They watch cricket and follow all the newspapers. They're that couple, like, who are like happy and old and cute together. That's still adorable. You did not have to have this, oh, we are having a really exotic adventure in the Middle East. That is not the only way of living. That's not the only representation of a happy marriage or passion. Nothing in the movie worked. The acting was shitty. All the choices made really pissed me off. Really gave us Rebecca's perspective. Like she's not all that bad if you think. God, now I feel like I'm defending a psychopath. She's clearly messed up. I'm not disagreeing with that. From a very young age, I think there were a lot of expectations placed on her, and she was told she was a beautiful girl. She modeled her personality after that, and I get all of that. And the way she's described in the book, definitely an evil, evil character. But what were her exact crimes, really? None of the things she does are like tangible crimes. She liked having sex and a lot of sexual partners, so she used to flirt with his friends. Also, the other thing is that she's manipulative, so like she like knows exactly what to say to a person to like get on their good side, to charm them. I don't personally like people who do that, but that doesn't make it a crime. It just makes them a fake person. But a villain? No, 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 no. The movie really should have tried to see the nuance of all these stories. Again, I don't think Maxim Deventer is evil either. I feel like he had a lot of pent up rage and he's like so used to suppressing his emotions that it was a crime of passion. And I also get the main heroine who's like 20 or 21. She's young. She's barely experienced the world. She's really craving security and family and all of that. So all of their actions for me were in a way justifiable. The other point is the main character, the heroine, that the whole book she is worried if her husband, Maxim Deventer, is in love with his dead wife and he only married her as rebound and he's about to like dump her any second. And she gets really, really paranoid and is about to kill herself and she's very, very, very depressed. And when she finds out that the reason he's so like tortured and tormented was not because he was in love with his ex-wife, but because he murdered her, she's like, oh, that means he didn't love her. That means he loves me. That's what she's concerned about in that moment. Not that he murdered her, his ex-wife, but he probably loves me instead of her. And I'm like, oh my God. Girl, grow up. I think she realizes how stupid that was also, the narrator, at least later. I felt the book is kind of vague enough on who's right and who's wrong. There's like, it doesn't really take sides except against maybe Miss Danvers, not necessarily though. I think all of them have gray, but the movie definitely tried to be like, this is right and this is wrong. And I'm like, no. But yes, that's my reading for this month. And next month, it's gonna be, I'm not gonna really have a set TBR list. I think there's a certain topics I want to focus on next month and I'll just read books as I go along. Okay, bye. I will go shower now. Adios.